Today in class we talked about direct variation, which was the equation y is equal to mx, where m was that constant of variation. And then in the notes today we're going to talk about inverse and joint variation, which is a little bit different. Here are your 8.1 practice answers, so you can kind of look over those, see how you did. Mark any you have questions about, and I'll take them in class tomorrow and kind of explain what may have gone wrong. Here's kind of a quick overview about the difference between direct variation and indirect variation. So direct variation is that scuba diver. As the depth increases, the water pressure also increases. So they're both increasing, they're doing the same thing, they're going up. And then we didn't super talk about it explicitly, but in order to find that constant of variation, we were taking y and dividing it by x. Okay? That's direct variation. They're both going up. For indirect variation, they're not actually both going up. So as the sprinter's speed increases, and the sprinter's speed, that's x. So as x is increasing, as the speed increasing, it's going to take him less time, which is your y, to actually make the distance, which is k. And so how I can explain that, let's say he has to run 10 miles. So y is equal to, k is 10 miles, and that's x. As his speed increases, so like we could say that his speed is 2, then we get 5. But if his speed increases, let's say that it's 5, then we know y is 2. It's going to take him less time, so this would have taken 5 minutes, that would have taken 2 minutes. And so it's an indirect variation. Over here, both things were increasing. Over here, one thing's going to increase, which causes the other thing to decrease. Okay? And our constant of variation was m. In indirect variation, we used the constant of variation, the letter k. So let's go ahead and get into some examples. So we're going to talk about inverse variation. If y varies inversely, so that means it's not k times q. If it's inverse, it's k divided by q. So that's the difference between inverse and direct. Direct is multiplication, inverse is division. So that's our little equation. We know that y is 22 and q is 6. We want to figure out what that constant of variation is. To do that, you multiply both sides by 6, and you end up with 132 as your constant of variation. So now you have your equation. Y is equal to 132 all over q. And it says find q when y is 15. So with this one, you'll actually multiply both sides by q. It's a q. You get 15q equals 132. And now you can get q by itself. This actually ends up being a decimal, 8.8. So the only thing you have to remember is if it's direct, it's multiplication. If it's inverse, it's division. You're taking the constant and dividing it by q. Okay? Now I want to talk about joint variation. So if you remember, direct variation is y, hold on. Direct variation is y is equal to mx. And then we have indirect variation, which is y is equal to k divided by x. Well, joint variation is y is equal to k, but it's like x and z. So it's very similar. Joint variation and direct variation are super similar because it's just multiplication, but joint variation means that there are two things that are causing this guy to change, while direct variation means there's only one thing that causes this guy to change. So let's do this guy, this problem. It says that z varies jointly, and so if it varies jointly, there's no division, it's all multiplication. We still use the constant k. Varies jointly with x and the square root of y. So that's our little equation. Now we're going to plug the numbers in and figure out what the constant is. So we know z is 6, we don't know k, x is 3, and y is 16. So we know the square root of 16 is 4. And we know that 3 times 4 is 12. So then when we divide both sides by 12, you realize that your constant of variation is a half. So our true equation is equal to z is equal to 1/2 x square roots of y. So this says find z, so we're going to figure out what z is when x is 7 and y is 4. The square root of 4 is 2, and we know half and 2 cancels out, so z is equal to 7. So I want to take both of these concepts and we're going to combine them this time. Okay, so this is varies jointly and inversely. It says if r varies jointly as s and t and inversely as u. So remember, jointly means multiplication and inversely means division. It says r is 18 when s is 2 and t is 3 and u is 4. So we have a bunch of things to plug in, and then we have to find the constant. So first let's write the equation. It says r varies jointly, which you know means multiplication. It says jointly with s and t, and I threw that constant in. And then inversely we know is division with u. So jointly is just the multiplication with k, and then inversely is the division with u. So let's plug the numbers in. It says r is 18, it says s is 2, t is 3, u is 4. So we have 18 is equal to k, and then 6 is on top, 4 is on the bottom. You can multiply both sides by 4. And you get 72 is equal to 6k. Divide both sides by 6, and we find out that k is 12. So that's our constant of variation. I'm going to plug that in here. It's t over u. And then we have to figure out what s is. So that's going to be our variable, s. And we're going to plug all these numbers in. So it says r is 6. We know our constant of variation is 12. We're figuring out what s is. T is 2, and u is 4, again. So you can go ahead and multiply both sides by 4 if you want. And I'm going to multiply those two guys together all in the same step. So we have 24 is equal to 12 times 2 is also 24s. You can divide both sides by 24. And 1 is equal to s. Ta-da! And of course there's going to be a word problem. I'm going to get it started for you, and then I would like for you to try to finish it on your own, and we'll see how you do when you come to class tomorrow. So for cones of equal volume, the height is inversely proportional, so remember that means division, to the square of the radius of the base. Okay? So it says the height is inversely proportional, so remember that's division, to the square of the radius. So just radius squared. Okay? That's your equation. I want to see if you can take the rest of this information down below and find your constant, and then figure out what the radius is when you're given that height. Okay? So see if you can find those two things on your own, and we'll go over it tomorrow. Good luck.